Childish Gambino is back with a new album here titled 3.15.20. He's got the date the wrong way round, but we'll let it slide. He is from America, you know, they always get that shit wrong. This was released on that date on his website, or some website anyway, that you know, people listened to, they accessed, and they weren't entirely sure if it was going to become an album or whatever, but like a few days later we saw it released onto streaming services, so it is looking like it's obviously an official album release. Gambino's always quite mysterious and not as exactly open with his intentions with some of his art. In fact, he never really speaks about it or explains it, which I appreciate, because I think, why explain art when you're just essentially dumbing it down even further by having to explain what you're trying to do and stuff like that. I guess that's kind of a flaw of what reviews are, to be honest. So I've just kind of completely nullified my entire existence of what I do on YouTube in a weird way there. But it's besides the point. I like it when artists just kind of stay quiet with what they do, their intentions, all that kind of stuff. I think it's really cool, and I appreciate Gambino for his efforts in that area to just always let things go out there, just like This Is America, and let people make their own interpretations. We need more of that from musicians, to be honest. But this new album here, not really having a proper title, not really having an album cover, not really having track titled names on the majority of the tracks, sort of makes me think that this is coming across, and when you listen to the music on there as well, like a demo album. This sounds like demos, because the majority of this album doesn't sound particularly polished, and there are lots of tracks that really feel like they could be trimmed down in a particular kind of way, whether it be in the length or some of the ideas. I don't know, man. Coming from a huge artist like Childish Gambino, you'd expect a better album to be coming out than this. So if you're a huge fan of Gambino, which I am, a fan of the Donald Glover side, I definitely love what he does in films and TV, particularly TV actually, but I'm not really that big on his music. So if you're a huge fan of his music, then I'm sure you'll find ways to appreciate what he's doing here. But as someone that's only really liked one album of his so far, and a couple of songs here and there, I can't say that this here is impressing me much at all. To me, it's like Untitled and Mastered if the songs on Untitled and Mastered were all bad, because the majority of this album here, I think, to my ears, is pretty bad. I've mentioned singing briefly just a minute ago there, and tracks like Time show the worst cases of his vocals on this album. I just think he sounds woeful here. I just do not think there is any reason for you to make your voice sound like this. It just does not sound good at all. Gambino's a decent singer. He's not amazing, but he's decent, and I just don't see what he's trying to do here. This reminds me a little bit of some of the moments on The Weeknd's latest album, where the singing sometimes doesn't flatter the artist at all, and they're totally much better than what they're presenting. And when you hear them sing like this, it's like, what is this? Why are you doing this? This is terrible. It's got an incredibly stiff beat with little to no fluidity to it at all. This is not how, you know, soul, funk, that kind of music should really ever sound, to be honest. And why is it so long? So many of these tracks go beyond 5-6 minutes, and I don't think any of them justify the length ever. 12:38, really not focused at all. Like, there is barely a structure to this song. There's, like, you know, really little to no like chorus verse type stuff going on here. He just sounds like he's improvising on the spot, and he doesn't really know what to do. And then eventually 21 Savage arrives, and it's just like, you're waiting so long for Gambino to just stop whatever he's doing just to get to 21 Savage, because at least 21 comes with something that's worth listening to. And even then, it's not like, you know, a saving grace. It's just like, oh, cool, we don't have to listen to Gambino anymore. I think 1910 is the first moment on the album that really resembles like a properly, fully formed track. I mean, 1910 is just showcasing that it's 19 minutes into the album. So that's a pretty long wait to get to a track that actually is worth listening to. It's just a much more enjoyable track to listen to. It's jamming, there's a nice little funky groove to it. It's not great, and it really doesn't even come close to some of the best tracks off Awaken My Love. But on this album, in the context of what I have to sit through here, it's actually quite a nice change of pace, because I'm actually finally somewhat enjoying something. Lyrically, it's pretty weak though. It's an attempt at like self-love on this one. Some of the lines don't really stand out very well. They kind of remind me occasionally of like how Lizzo attempts to like express self-love, and she's sometimes pretty good at that, but other times it's just a bit weak and limp. There isn't really much to hold on to or grab onto. And this track's similar as well. There's some really poor lines that stand out. Just not really that big on the way it's presented. The line "to be happy" really means someone else ain't. It still confuses me. I don't really see why he'd word that line like this, because I mean, I guess if you are happy, then obviously someone else isn't gonna be. That just goes without saying. But I think the subtext behind it was meant to be a bit more impactful than it should have been. But to be honest, Gambino's never been that strong of a lyricist, so I'm not really surprised lines like this just stand out in pretty poor ways. I mean, even on his biggest song that was so political and important, and even I almost fell for it when it first came out, which I kind of wish I didn't get so hyped over it now in hindsight, "This Is America," didn't say anything aside from the video. Like, it really didn't have much to say in the song whatsoever that was really important or handed you much to think about, which is why the song never really ended up aging that well, in my opinion. But the video itself is fantastic. But yeah, it's just, these are the kinds of things that make you look and think, yeah, Gambino really isn't that strong at putting together a lyrical idea. And this album, again, with how it sort of sounds as poor as it does, really only goes to show that lyrically all those things are highlighted even further when the songs sound bad. Because from this track onwards, there's such a terrible run of songs. Like, these are genuinely terrible to my ears. The whole "sweet thing" that keeps repeating is just so fucking corny. Like, just stop, I can't stand that shit, man. And then when he repeats the refrain of "'cause I love you," it really sounds like Prince. Like, this track then hits me and thinks, yeah, this sounds like a poorly made version of Prince's "Feel For You" in a way. 3222, I'm definitely convinced someone out there is going to try and label this as some like avant-garde, amazing, experimental piece of music, because that's just what people tend to do. And mate, you'd be far from that, because this just is a whole complete mess. It's this point on the album that reminds me of the fact that people keep bringing up Yeezus in comparison to this. Kanye West Yeezus, of course, I mean, and I'm just not really seeing it. But maybe a track like this probably is making people think of that weird experimental side of hip-hop that Kanye was doing on that album. But honestly, it doesn't sound good on the ears. 3531 is somehow worse than the previous tracks, even though I've been very negative about those. But this probably is the worst on the whole thing to me, because the whole big boat, get out the way. It's like, God, did you hire Weezer to do a song for a kids show? Like, what is this? Is this Ben Folds 5? No one would listen to this if he released this song. The little acoustic guitar melody that's coming throughout as well, like, Jesus Christ, man, this sounds like Imagine Dragons doing a really soft song for a radio advert or some shit. 3928 is just another moment for me that reminds me of the fact that this honestly sounds more like a demo release than anything else, because it just needs expanding upon. Like, there's so little to this track, and it's so out of place as well, like in comparison to the other tracks that try and go for a little bit more melody or a bit more bombastic on the ears, like the weird experimental track. But then we get to the final two tracks, and this is honestly the best the album gets. This is the best for me. The one that, you know, is talking about violence. I think that's pretty cool, that one, because I like the way he's describing little snippets of things, you know, that kid getting beat up by the police, and then, you know, the little gang violence thing that he mentions as well. Like those little snippets where he doesn't go into much detail, but I think it works effectively because he doesn't really need to tell you any more than that. You kind of get a picture, an instantaneous picture of what he's saying, and he doesn't even use that many words, which I really appreciate. It feels like the most fully realized track in terms of a lyrical idea. Like there is just something he's thought about quite well, and you just know exactly what you're listening to as soon as he starts singing. Like I think this is a track that just feels like the most focused lyrically on the whole thing, instead of listening to him go big fuck, get out the way. It does once again go on a little bit too long, but I think that's just an issue with this album in general anyway. But I think what it goes for is effective, and I appreciate this one. I think this is one of the best tracks. And then the closing track I think is really good as well. I think this is honestly one of the most I guess fully fleshed out instrumental tracks on the whole album here too. You could easily slip this into Awaken My Love and I don't think you'd notice. Honestly, it just does sound completely polished. His vocal performance here is completely energetic. It's like a complete change of pace from what we've got throughout the entire album here. It's like listening to a completely different artist on the final track, which is so weird to me that we had to wait so long to get to these two tracks, which I actually think are worthwhile. But other than that, I think, yeah, the majority of this is just not really for me at all. Like, I don't enjoy a good chunk of this album. To me, there are genuinely terrible moments on this. I cannot excuse some of these tracks, which I've already mentioned how bad they are throughout anyway, and I just have no reason to ever sit through those ones again. Like, really bad. So the fact that I would only really take 2 tracks from this entire thing really means I can't go any higher than a 4 out of 10, which I think will definitely piss off a lot of Childish Gambino fans if they're watching this video. But I can't lie. I've got to be honest. There is too much on this album that's genuinely bad. I'm quite baffled as to what people are praising so much about this. I'd definitely love to see what you think in the comments. If you're genuinely loving this or liking this, then I've got to hear what it is that you like, because wow, this was really poor at points, like really poor. And the fact that it does sound so demo-ish as well makes me wonder why he dropped this as a final album. Don't know, really confused by this one. Thank you for watching my review. Hopefully you enjoyed what I had to say. Let me know your thoughts. Try not to leave a dislike and run away. I want to hear what you think, what you love about it. Have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. That would be great. And goodbye.